Masculinity. What does it mean to be masculine? That's what we're going to look at in today's video. I've been watching a lot of Wes Watson, who's one of my new personal favorites in terms of content, self-development, vibe, just what he talks about and what he's about. And I think that looking at what a lot of he's put out in the last year or so has made me think and consider my own journey as a man. What am I working towards? What am I building? What are my values? Things like that. So what I'm going to do is talk about what it means to be masculine, and I'm going to share with you what I think is a guide on masculinity. Now, I don't think that I'm necessarily an expert on masculinity because I don't think anyone really is. I think that it's very subjective. It depends on your worldview, your experiences, and all that. But I must say I've worked with hundreds of men on their relationship to women, on their relationship to their own mindsets and their own identities around being a man. And I've studied with this within myself through very intense spirituality and a very long spiritual journey, going through heartbreaks and relationships, mentoring and teaching women in addition to men. I spent a year where I focused only on teaching women. So I've been immersed in self-development and dating for a while now, and I think that I have a competent view of what healthy masculinity could look like, it might look like, and I've seen it play out in my own life, in my relationships as well. And the reason why I'm talking about this specifically is because I've had experiences in this long history of pain, this growth and success, and I know what it feels like to be a guy wondering, how do I be in my masculine? How do I present myself in my masculine to the world around me, to women that are around me? How do I have women want to invest in me and feminine women be attracted to my masculine, as it were? I've read all the books. I've read Way of the Superior Man. I've read Rollo Tomassi, all these books on the red pill and how the real world works. I've studied them. I've looked at them. I've watched Andrew Tate. I've seen all this stuff. And I wonder, what the fuck is masculinity actually all about? And I think I have a pretty nuanced, non-biased perspective in this. I've seen both sides, the side of feminism and the side of female empowerment, which I think is beautiful in its own right. And I've seen the other side. And to give you some context, I've done a lot of research in the last several years on evolutionary psychology and different dating trends in our society. And I have many client stories and client results over the last 6 years. So that's where this information I have is coming from. If you are ready to listen, let's dive into it. And if you think someone else may be a better, voice to listen to in this arena of talking about masculinity, then maybe this video wouldn't be for you. But I'm going to go ahead and dive in and get started. So generally today, what I found is we have two narratives that are at play that almost contradict each other or go against each other. The first narrative is men are the worst. And this is what I would call modern feminism. Okay. And I know that's not what feminism originally was meant to be. And I know that there are people still who say feminism is still about pushing for equality because we have all these different, inclusion and diversity and equity and all these little things and reparations and all this shit that the left in politics, this is not going to be a political video, by the way, but that they talk about, a lot of these voices talk about. So, but the sentiment generally is that men are the worst, especially if you are a straight white male, which is the peak of the worst. Then under that is privilege. So, it was really funny. I had a friend, a girl that I was sleeping with a while ago, just a couple of years ago. And in the last 2 years, she was following one of my Instagram accounts, and she saw me post a few things about success and earning money and crushing it. And she got into this huge public fight with me because she's a girl, she's African American. She's very, about empowerment and diversity and inclusion and all these kind of things. These are the words she tropes out and the words she uses. Minorities, people that are disadvantaged. That's the thing she talks about, which is totally okay. And I was talking to her about how I've worked really hard to be in the position I am, where I earn a good amount of money in my business, and we're doing quite well. And she was saying, you're doing this not because you come from a position of privilege because you're black, but she was saying it's a system that wants you to fail. And I was debating her. I was like, I don't see how the system wants me to fail. In fact, many of my clients are white men that look up to me and that I've mentored and I've helped get in relationships, and they respect me the way they would anyone else, 100%. And we went back and forth, but the narrative is kind of that now. Men are the worst. If you're a white man, it's even worse. But men in general are just the worst. That's modern feminism what it kind of is right now. Men have the privilege and men need to be softened, and masculinity is all things related to men as in a traditional sense are bad. Then you have the other side, which is men are the best, fuck women. And this is the manosphere. Now, I'm not a very popular YouTuber at all. I get 200, 300, maybe 500 views if I'm lucky on a video. So most people are not going to hear this. Most people will not hear me talk about this. But for those of you who do, I'd love to talk about it with you in the comments, actually. What I found is in the manosphere community, from YouTubers like Pearly Things, YouTubers like Myron, the Fresh and Fit guys, you know, that I wouldn't consider Andrew Tate in this because he's not Red Pill, actually. He's just an influencer who has some pretty fun, like crazy, interesting ideas. But in the Red Pill space, as it were, Fit X Fearless, these kind of guys, you may not know all of them. But what I found is, although they do say that they're talking about Red Pill truths, the version of the truth that they pitch and that they talk about is grounded a lot of times in anger, bitterness, and I won't say hatred. I think hatred's too far, but bitterness and lacks nuance. So these guys do, I would say their sentiment is fuck women. Even when Myron, when he talks about like a man, he's like, a man's worth is done by this, this, and this. He won't say women are amazing and we love them too.
Fuck the bitches! The world determines your value based on the value that you bring to it, man! God damn! Shit!
This nigga just exploded, bro.
Well,
Holy shit.
that's his voice for
Stop
tonight.
basing your value on bitches, man! Their values determined on if they could get you, not the other way around, bro. There's a reason why these chicks are gonna share you. You don't share them. You're the fucking prize, man. There's a reason why if you're a king and you marry some bum bitch, she becomes a queen, but it never works the other way around. Women don't build, they move in.
He'll say, women are delusional. And he's talking to a male audience. So Myron, by the way, is this podcast called Fresh and Fit. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. But he's a podcaster who's into Red Pill manosphere. Men are the best kind of shit. And there's no nuance, right? There's no reading between the lines. Like, is there a middle ground? Is it not where just like men are not the best per se and women are these dumb bimbos who are going to take advantage of all men? Does it have to be that? And is it the other side, which is, you know, female empowerment, the woman is future, God is a woman? Like, where's the middle ground between men are men, women are women, and we both have roles, and both of those roles are extremely, extremely important? There are people that I listen to who do have this nuance. I think Jay Waller is a huge example of this. I love his stuff. Justin Waller, he's an example of someone who has this nuance, but there is zero nuance nowadays, and that's a problem. I'm going to break down to you why masculinity feels so difficult, or it may be difficult for you to even understand your place in the world when it comes to masculinity. How do we handle this? How do we resolve this internally? Let's start looking at the current state of affairs. I want to break down for you a little bit of history. And this is history that is not going to come new to you. You've probably heard this before, but I think it helps to maybe just hear it kind of laid out in this way. So let's understand how we've gotten to this place. Most of history, men have been on top. Men have been the people who were on top, in control through most of history. Then people say the other arguments, and I'm going to get to those. You know, men were dying in wars. That too, yes. But throughout history, men have been the ones who were on top. Men have generally been the oppressors throughout most of history. All from Genghis Khan to these fucking kings and sultans and whoever the fuck it was. Like, even in the US, you know, men in these positions of powers, in these positions of power, creating societies and kind of dictating how things went. However, men also have been the ones creating the most. That's also a fact. Men have built the structures, the infrastructures, the paths and the frameworks that have allowed our society as people, I'm talking about a collective, the world collectively, as much as wrong in the world, but you know, the world to move forward and to advance. In many places it isn't, and that really sucks. There's people that have been left behind, but you know, men have been the ones to create this. That is a fact. Doesn't mean women haven't contributed in great ways. Doesn't mean women have not born those men who have created these amazing things. And it doesn't mean, again, there aren't women who have invented amazing things. There have been amazing female scientists, all this. But the people who have pushed society forward, who have pushed our world forward, have been men. The reason is because of physical strength. That's the reason. Because men were able to bear a lot of those burdens physically, whereas women simply were not designed to bear those burdens. They were designed to bear a different physical load, being children and the furthering of the human race. biologically, okay? Now, 3 big components have shifted in our society over time. 3 huge components, and I'm going to explain each of these. Number 1 is violence. Violence is a component that's shifted a lot in our society, which affects how society has moved forward and how decisions are made. Number 2 is workforce. The workforce has also changed, which I'll explain. And then number 3 is reproduction. Reproduction has changed a lot in terms of the weight attached to reproduction and how people reproduce. I'll explain in a second. So number 1 is violence. Violence is much less relevant in today's society. Now, there are some places that are war-torn countries that are like fucked up and they're going through some shit. And again, in those countries, they oftentimes have more of a patriarchal societal structure, right? Where the men are the ones who kind of have the aggression or leading, because violence is still an important factor in the way that those micro societies or those economies play out. Let's take a war-torn country, maybe, some for this place that's third world or even sub-third world. I don't know if you can get lower than third world. But if you look at a place like that, where violence is a very, not a good part, but a very real part of day-to-day life, places like that, men oftentimes have more power in those situations. You're not talking about feminism there. They're not talking about women's rights. Maybe there's some kind of protest here and there in different countries, sure, but generally in places where violence is propagated and things are done through physical means of power, right? Where it's I dominate you because I've got the guns, I've got the manpower, the strength. Men are still in charge in those situations. So violence in modern societies, generally main societies, is much less relevant. So you go to any Scandinavian country, the person who's rising to the top of the power structures is not getting there by violence. You look in the US, again, we got a lot of guns, but it's not necessarily physical violence, and it's more of a systemic or a problem we have with the structures of our country and how things have been built, which I could argue is good in a way, but also bad. So in the US, as an example, if you want to become president, you do it through manipulation, you do it through buying the right people off, how you present yourself, your marketing, social media, all these kind of things. So being the man who is a man because of violence no longer holds weight in our society. Generally, in most modern societies, if you're watching this video in one of those societies, being a man is not tied to violence anymore, whereas back in the day it probably was, or it definitely was. Number 2 is workforce. So women became a significant part of the workforce. Now, I'm not a historian, so I don't know when this happened. I have some ideas from what I've read and generally knowing kind of timelines, but I'm not going to make any bullshit claims here. But women became an important part of the workforce, and they became a part of the workforce around World War II. Women working in the plants. Also, governments could tax more because women were going to be working. So now governments are able to tax doubly. They're able to tax families. So now the nuclear family of wife stays at home and husband works. That's no longer happening. Inflation happened. People need to earn more. Americans wanted access to more things. They get a 2-car family, that kind of thing. Get the big house, 2 garages. So women are now working in the workforce. So now women have autonomy to some extent of how they're making money. I've dated girls in New York that were making more money than me. They're working in finance. And something interesting, those girls a lot of times would still expect me to pay for things. Really, really funny. But I would be dating girls that would make more money than me, whereas if you think about maybe 20s, 30s, you didn't really have women working in finance like that. Nowadays, women have opportunity, despite what the other sides may say that women can't make money because men are holding them back. Women, if they work hard and put their mind to it, they can fucking crush. So, and there's proof on this, like data on how much women earn and graduate college and things like that versus men. People just don't like using the data because it goes against wage gap theory. So women have become a significant part of the workforce. That's the second thing that changed in terms of this shift in masculinity. Number 3, reproductive health care, birth control, became accessible. I don't know when. I feel like it was 60s, could have been 50s, but I've heard this somewhere. But reproductive health care became more accessible. It became fully accessible. Reliable reproductive health care, women being able to take the pill, birth control being readily available in different forms, different types of birth control, and women being able to access it freely. This was super, super important because now the traditional role of woman gets pregnant and bears child and she's like at the behest, at the whim of the man who just impregnated her, and she hopes he holds her safe while she's weak. Women are no longer as weak as they were before, which is really good, I think. If I have a daughter, I would want my daughter to grow up in this society. That, to be honest, if I ever have a kid, I don't. If I ever have a child and it's a girl, I would much rather she grows up in this society than one of the past, societies or civilizations, fucking 1800s, 1700s. I'd probably rather have her grow up in this one. Maybe, I'm not sure, but I could argue she wouldn't be as happy possibly if she had more masculine traits, traditionally masculine. But whatever. Women have opportunity now. They can crush shit, which is really, really good. But what happened is, as a result of this shift in society, the masculine role is no longer clearly defined. So it fucks with us as men because, again, biologically, what happens is when you had these earlier societies, it was kind of just governed by like evolutionary tendencies, right? Man strong, man hunt, man work. We follow God in this like fire god, whatever, caveman type shit, right? And then you have the women who cook and wait for men to come home, and the man takes his woman and some ritual and has her. King has his wives because he's the king and he can do what he wants. Nowadays, it's not like that. And again, for good, there is less violence in modern society. That's good. There is less people being directly exploited through means of violence and people being harmed like that. So that is indirectly, in a way, it's good because we have more safety, because things are easier now. It's easier for people to get ahead, people to have a better quality of life, medicine, all these kind of things, right? Society is much different than it was before, but at the same time, the masculine and the feminine role is no longer defined. It becomes more clear, by the way, in male and female direct interactions, things like sex, where we're just our raw evolutionary selves, right? That fucking lizard brain or whatever comes after the lizard brain, I forget, there's a couple levels. I fucking shit at that, but whatever, that version of us, that pre-evolutionary ancestor, or that evolutionary historical ancestor, that comes out during sex. That's a manifestation of this. You and your masculine, her and her feminine. She wants to feel that. When you're on a date, why does she want you to pay? Because she wants to feel the roots of her fucking evolution in biology. So when guys get mad at this, they're like, she wants me to pay. But in today's society, well, fucking play the game, brother. Today's society works the way it's gonna work. But you as a man talking to a beautiful woman in front of you, that woman still wants to be led. She wants to surrender to your masculine the way that she would have back in the fucking evolutionary historical times, right? That's the same biology is there. The biology hasn't changed at all. Nothing has changed biologically. The frameworks of society have changed, though, and you got to understand that. So what I'm going to share with you here is how I define masculinity for myself. Here's how I view my own masculinity and how I wrap my head around all this. And maybe you'll disagree with it. Maybe some of it you're going to love. Maybe you'll love all of it. But here's how I've wrapped my head around all this. Number one, for me, masculinity is creating a path to better my immediate world. Masculinity to me is all about path. It's all about trailblazing. It's like, can I create a path that's going to make my present better? And it doesn't mean the present of me sitting on the laptop talking right now, but the present to me is like my week, my month, my next year, my present, my world around me. Am I working to make that better? What am I doing to invest in my present and make it better? And then also my future. But a big part of it is creating a path. The next part of this is taking on or being willing to take on responsibilities that align with this purpose, right? So are you willing to take on responsibilities and invest in responsibilities that align with this higher purpose, that align with you making your world better? Are you willing to do that? Because a lot of men aren't. A lot of men are not willing to take on responsibility that's going to align with this path. So the big part of masculinity to me is taking on responsibility, whether that's taking on responsibility in a relationship, whether that's taking on responsibility if you ever have a child. That's masculinity, taking on that responsibility, trailblazing, right? Creating the path and taking the responsibilities that come along with that path. Maybe the responsibility for you would be working on yourself and being dedicated to your fitness, to your body. Maybe it would be working on your mind and treating your body and your mind as a temple, right? That's an example of taking on responsibility. The third part of masculinity for myself is, and this is an interesting one, some would disagree. I sometimes falter back and forth between this, but it would be fulfilling the biological and evolutionary imperative to further the human race. I believe that this is at the core of our masculinity. We are alive to do this. This is your biological drive. It is your biological and evolutionary imperative to further the human race. That's what I believe. And I think that anything that's outside of that path, and I don't mean you got to have kids super fast, because you could pretty much do it, give or take, whenever you want as a dude, as a man. But are you on a path where you're setting yourself up that when you do decide to further the human race, it can be done in the most holistic, most efficient, the healthiest way possible? Are you setting yourself up for that? So if you're sitting here slacking off, not working on your genes, your genetics, and your health, and you plan on impregnating some woman when you're fucking 35, maybe you're past that, maybe you're getting there when you're 35, and you're going to live a life that's a lower standard than what you know you could be living because you haven't put in the work, to me, that's you being off of your masculine path. Right? That's you not actually fulfilling your biological imperative to further the human race. You might even be detracting from it. I'm not kidding. Just having a fucking kid doesn't mean you're furthering the human race. If you raise a child in a system that's set up for them to fail, you're not furthering the human race. I mean, there's crazy good stories of people who have turned around, and maybe that kid will take on responsibility on their own outside of you. But do you want to have a shitty kid? I'm not kidding with you, right? We are a product of our history. We're a product of our childhood. So what I'm doing as an example for myself, when I want to have a child, which next couple years maybe, I'm young, I'm 28, I've got time, but what I want to do is make sure that I set an ecosystem with how I earn, how fit I am, my mindset, the women that I attract into my life. Right now I have an amazing partner. Maybe she'll be the mother of my children. Maybe it will be someone else, but I want to make sure that how I invest in my future and what I create right now is in line with furthering the human race and is the best path for that future offspring, because that is part of my masculine imperative. That is what it is. That's what I see it as, at least. Now, there's a couple of non-negotiable aspects of my personal masculinity, and I think some of these you might resonate with, maybe you won't, but I think there's some value you can use here. So the first aspect of my masculinity that is a non-negotiable that I have to have, that I must see, show up in my life, is a commitment to physical fitness and improvement. That's the first one. It's a commitment to physical fitness and improvement. In the last year, or 2 years actually, I've been highly dedicated with my fitness, highly dedicated to the gym. I've been on a path of mastery, and I'm so proud of myself because there's noticeable changes in how I look. There's noticeable changes in how I walk, how I present myself in the world because of my dedication to this. So this is one that's non-negotiable. Commitment to physical fitness and empowerment. What I do is every week I go to the gym 4 times. That's my baseline. Sometimes I do 3 because I tend to work more, but 3 to 4. 4 is my average. Most weeks I'm in the gym 4 times without fail, generally. And I'm there and I'm working out. I'm eating the right supplements, taking the right, additional supplements to make sure that my body can grow the way it's supposed to and I can look the best I can. I can feel the best I can. Number 2, the second non-negotiable aspect of my masculinity, make others better by creating and distributing intellectual or physical resources. This is a big one. Now, for me, how this manifests is I'm always talking to people and going deep with them on what's going on in their lives. Now, part of this is my job, because I built a career, I've built a living for myself around imparting to men, frameworks and systems around dating success, creating high quality relationships, attracting high quality women. That's what I do for my job. So I'm cheating, I have an advantage here. But what it means when I say making others better by creating and distributing intellectual or physical resources, what I mean is interacting with the world from a place of giving instead of just waiting to receive. So it could be simple as contributing to your Uber driver by asking how their day is going and saying what are some of the struggles they're facing and going deep with them, right? That's an example of this, making someone else's day better, making someone else better. It could be mentoring someone. It could be giving to the poor, physical resources, right? Like money. It could be when you see the homeless person walking, you go in and buy him a sandwich, right? How are you giving to society? How are you making other people better? Are you just this isolated bubble who's sucking from the fucking world? Or are you creating for yourself and then also creating for others, however that looks like? Maybe it's also creating a business, by the way. This is why I think one of the best things you could do as a man is to build a business. Even if it's not your full-time thing, it could just be part-time. But are you creating and distributing intellectual or physical resources that are going to make other people better? Number 3, be honest with myself at all times. There's some serious decisions that I'm about to make in my life that are going to be very difficult. And my commitment to myself is I want to make these decisions from a place of honesty and a place of integrity. Right? So be honest with myself at all times. This is the third non-negotiable aspect of my masculinity. Number 4, ethically create options and freedom of choice to benefit myself and those in my future. This is going back to creating the path. I'll never negotiate on this. I'm always going to be creating options. And again, I said ethically because you can create options unethically. You can do that. You can use manipulation, deceit, trickery, lies, aggression. You can use those things to create options. You can. And some people, this is really attractive to them. And if you're one of those people, we'll never work together because that's not what I'm about. But can you ethically, sometimes you toe the line, but can you ethically create options in your life? Can you become the kind of man who works on himself to the point where you have freedom, and that freedom, as a result of the freedom you've created, you're able to make better decisions about your future? Can you do that? If you can't, there's a good chance you may not be on your masculine path, but are you able to go into those spaces where you can create options and have freedom of choice? A man who doesn't have freedom of choice is a man who's not on his purpose. I'm not kidding with you, brother. Like, when you don't have freedom of choice, when you're boxed in and locked in, oh, there's a world of hurt coming for you. And I've experienced this in many ways. I've experienced it with dating, but that was the journey that I decided to conquer first. So now I have freedom of choice in dating. That's my big frontier, and that's what I give to the world. The next one for me is financially. Do I have freedom of choice financially? I'm better than where a lot of people are, honestly, but I'm not where I want to be. I've got a ways to go before I have true freedom. I don't have true freedom financially, not even close to it. So I'm working on that right now as well. So can you ethically create options and freedom of choice to benefit yourself and those people that are going to be in your future? Now, I want to end with this. This is going to be really important here. And I want to say, if you're loving this, if you're learning from this, if this resonates with you and you made it to the end and you're not subscribed to my channel, bro, it would mean a fucking ton to me if you press that subscribe button. One, because you can see where I'm uploading and you can learn more from me. We can do this journey together. It's completely free, by the way. And then number two, it would just mean a lot because our channel would grow and be boosted. And I think I'm saying some of the best shit on YouTube right now. And I think one day we're going to be one of the best channels, but I got to keep the consistency going. So press that subscribe button, join the tribe, and help us out. So let's go into this last part. Why is your view of masculinity actually important? Why the fuck do we care? Why does masculinity matter at all? So there's three reasons that I've kind of dialed down here. Number one is, if you decide that healthy masculinity is your responsibility, your future partners will be feminine. Okay, if you decide that healthy masculine responsibility or healthy masculinity is your responsibility, the future women that you create, the relationships you build, those women are going to be so unapologetically and beautifully feminine. They will surrender to your masculine, my friend. And all this shit that's happening in the dating marketplace, all this stuff in the world, like all these influencers coming out who are ranting to these guys who are angry and in the super chats talking about 304s, none of that's going to apply to you. None of it matters. None of it. Because all these girls that you see out there, the ones that have these fronts and all these, the girls that are not on Instagram, the ones that are not just posting everything on TikTok, there are amazing women out there that are attractive, that have had a couple hookups, they've been out there, but they want a masculine man they can surrender to, and they will show you the most feminine version of themselves. Trust me, I had this with my girl and other girls I've seen. They will surrender, but you've got to be in your masculine so that you can play that kind of game, right? You've got to be able to play that game. It's kind of like money. This is a really good example. People who worry about money are just people who are broke. If you're not broke is relative, of course, but if you're in a state of financial abundance, the problems that the commoners, as it were, have, you're not going to have those problems. It's the same thing with your dating life. If you're thriving in your masculine, all the questions that you see online that guys are complaining about, that guys are asking, talking about, how it's difficult and girls are toxic nowadays and I'm focused on myself because women are whatever, those problems won't apply to you because you're thriving in your masculine. So the version of women that you're going to get back is this amazing, beautiful, feminine woman. The next part of this, why your view of masculinity is important, is because your role in the world is going to be determined by this mindset. People will either respect you or disrespect you. They're going to treat you as a masculine man, or they're going to disrespect you entirely. It's like there's an in-between sometimes, of course, but generally, if you are a masculine man, people will treat you as if you are masculine. That balance will happen. That dichotomy is going to happen in your life. So your role in the world is going to be determined by that mindset that you have. And then finally, your story, how your story plays out in the world, the narrative that you live, the life you lead, is going to follow your view of your masculinity as a man in the modern world. That's what it is. Okay? I hope that you understand this. This was my guide on masculinity. I hope it made sense. If you're working on yourself, I'm proud of you. I'm rooting for you, brother. We're going to fucking crush this journey together. If you want to hop on a call with me and you want me to help you build this incredible life of abundance when it comes to dating and relationships and start attracting some high quality women into your life, if you're able to invest in a transformation, and I really mean invest because my shit's not cheap. So if you're able to have a conversation around getting results and attracting amazing women into your life, look down below. There's a couple different links where you can reach out to me. We can book a call, talk for half an hour, see if it'd be a good fit from both ends if I want to work with you and if you want to work with me. And if it's a good fit, we'll do some work together and send you on this amazing journey of transformation where you attract high quality women on your terms without wasting time and all this bullshit. All right. Be blessed, bro. Stay amazing. Stay healthy. Keep crushing it. Keep working on your masculine presence and masculine energy. And I will see you on our next training.